as well at this point. And this is a situation now that it is possible because there's no other automobiles that they can try that pit maneuver. The traffic has been backed up enough behind where this is taking place. No one else really would be in jeopardy if they chose to spin the suspect out. Tinted windows, no plates, unclear if this is a stolen vehicle. We're still trying to ascertain how this pursuit actually started. Our assignment desk is working on that at this point. Again, a dangerous situation in that there was a report that this suspect driving or a passenger, unclear if there are any passengers at this point, may have a weapon, a gun in hand here. The last pursuit that we covered late last week, we saw a situation where they used the spike strip, and that was a situation where I believe they knew where he was exiting the freeway because they threw it at an off-ramp, and there was an officer already there ready to throw that strip down, and it was successful at that point. This is a situation, too. Now that there's no traffic moving on this side of the Ventura Freeway, it's the westbound side that they could use that method as well to bring this to a halt. LAPD is very careful, though. In recent years, they've led the nation in jurisdictions in which there have been bystanders that have been injured as a result of these high-speed pursuits. This one right now, not so much high speed. He's going about 65, 70 miles an hour, about the speed limit, making his way now into Calabasas. He passed Topanga Canyon already and towards Ventura County. All right, looks like he may be exiting the freeway here. We'll widen out. We'll see what that off-ramp is here and see if he's going to get on Ventura Boulevard. So taking an off-ramp here from the 101 freeway and choosing to pick up surface streets. He stopped. It looks like he's obeying the traffic signs. And, again, anytime he doesn't, those officers are marking those infractions down as well, and he can be cited for running the red light, for speeding, for pushing through a stop sign. Now he's heading back in the opposite direction, paralleling the 101 freeway on Ventura Boulevard here. So now he's making his way back east where this pursuit initially started. Again, it started in the Mission District of the Los Angeles Police Department, and I can see up ahead that traffic is still being held on all westbound lanes of the 101 freeway, but now we have a lot of traffic coming up ahead here on both sides, both the east and westbound side of Ventura Boulevard, and Ventura Boulevard will be making its way underneath the 101. This is where there's a ramp here to exit and enter Ventura Boulevard, and this is where we think that the pursuit may have started. At least that's where our assignment desk initially heard where this was going. Stopping at the stoplight there. Again, Lauren Logan, he's acting very calm and normal at this point. He's waiting for the spotlight. He's waiting for his safe turn to make his way through the intersection here in Tarzana, making his way now eastbound on Ventura Boulevard back towards the 101 freeway. And he will have an option to get back on the 101 freeway, the Ventura freeway, if he chooses. All right, I'm seeing now that the LAPD has let traffic go, but it's backed up pretty good on the westbound side of the 101, the side that we were tracking this pursuit on initially when we came upon it. So keeping to the speed, keeping to the stoplights here in Tarzana, making his way eastbound on Ventura Boulevard, Lauren and Logan.
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard to tell that this is even a pursuit because he seems to be obeying all traffic laws, including the speed limits there, which is good news. Obviously much safer than driving recklessly, but still not obeying police, right?
Rick, was he ever driving recklessly before we checked in with you, or has he just always been kind of obeying the laws? Aside from not pulling over.
From what we've seen and heard, it seems like he's been keeping to the speed limit since this pursuit started. But what he's not doing is he's not pulling over. And people always wonder, why hasn't he pulled over? Well, he feels that he can still get away. And on average, 18% of people being pursued by the Los Angeles Police Department do get away. Now, sometimes that's just a safety issue that the police department thinks is just so dangerous that they back off and perhaps track the individuals via airship. And in this case, there is an LAPD helicopter circling overhead, several units tracking him from behind, and now going underneath the Ventura Freeway overpass. So this is where Ventura Boulevard meets the Ventura Freeway, and it looks like just as I thought, he's getting right back on the freeway in the same direction where this pursuit initially started. So now he's tracking in an eastbound direction on the 101 freeway, safely entering the freeway there, keeping his speeds at the speed limit here as he enters this stretch of the Ventura Freeway. Now he'll be heading back towards Encino and towards the 405 freeway. A lot of times, and I mentioned this when we cover pursuits, that they stay in a neighborhood that they're familiar with. Perhaps they feel they can get away at a house, a location that they're familiar with. And in this situation, it looks like he's doing laps here back and forth in this stretch of the San Fernando Valley.
And we can see traffic is permitted on this freeway, so he is driving along with other cars there. How far back is the CHP?
We'll pull back here and show you. And as of right now, this is still an LAPD pursuit. Now, a lot of times the CHP will help out in situations like this where they'll block ramps and hold traffic back. It's an LAPD helicopter that's circling overhead as well. Sorry about the cloud layer here as we clear out from this morning's rain and drizzle. And we'll widen out. We'll show you the suspect and then the amount of units tracking him behind. He's actually going a little slower than the speed limit at this time here on the 101 freeway. We'll push back in and we'll show you that. And they are starting to hold traffic now on the eastbound side, just like they did on the westbound side. Westbound side has been able to go at this point. Now he's doing just what he did when he was traveling westbound near Topanga. He's deciding to stop in the middle lane here, and we'll see what happens. Let's see if he's just going to take a quick break and then move on, or if he's going to surrender at this point. Again, a newer model car, obviously, paper plates on the car, tinted windows, sort of one of those hybrid SUVs here, possibly an Audi, stopped in the middle lane of the 101 freeway. And here we go again. Officers getting out, guns drawn, giving directions to the suspect driver here. Why this pursuit started, we're still trying to ascertain that from LAPD Media Relations. At this time, we don't have that information here, but it's been here in the valley now for a good 20-25 minutes or so, impacting both sides of the 101 freeway. And there he goes again, starting to make a move back eastbound on the 101 freeway, just like what we saw. So obviously he's acting erratically. We heard he could have a weapon, he could have a gun, so this is really a very dangerous situation. And if he does have a weapon, and that has been confirmed, I'm surprised that both sides of the freeway are not closed at this time, just for the safety of the drivers traveling on the westbound side, the side that is now open. This is the eastbound side near Reseda Boulevard now, making its way through Tarzana and into Encino towards the 405 freeway.
Rick, I would think that since there's no plates on the car, that might be an additional challenge for law enforcement. There's no way to really get a hold of the potential owner of that car and try to get some additional information unless they can make out what the paper plates say.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And Logan, Lauren, it's a situation where, we may not know exactly, we don't know how this pursuit started, but they may know who they're dealing with. They may have been following this individual, had a lead on him. He may have been wanted for something else, and that's how they were able to come upon him and try to light him up, start the pursuit. And once they lit him up and he chose not to pull over, that's when it became a pursuit. And that's what we have here near Winnetka Avenue now on the eastbound side of the 101 in the heart of the 818, the San Fernando Valley. And all eastbound lanes are blocked now by the Los Angeles Police Department, possibly with the aid of the California Highway Patrol as well.
This is bizarre behavior, though, wouldn't you say, Rick, for him to just stop on the freeway continuously and then pick up and keep going over and over again?
Absolutely. He's acting very erratically at this point, so they're dealing with somebody who's trying to evade the police, possibly has a weapon, and acting in such a manner that he could be a bit unstable. So that's why they're very concerned about this, obviously. And they're keeping a relatively safe distance. Well, why not just a little bit? But I count about a half a dozen LAPD units trailing him as we pull back a little bit. You can see how far of a distance they are now between the suspect. But hey, they have him followed. They're following him in the air by the LAPD helicopter as well. Surprised some of these ramps haven't been blocked off, because you can see traffic is still being allowed to enter on this eastbound side of the 101 freeway here. Now we're coming up on Encino, and then we'll be coming up on the 405. That guy's speeding by there.
Yeah.
See that? You can see
he's going pretty slow.
He's going about 55, 60 miles an hour now, and all these other motorists probably don't even know what's going on because they just got on the freeway. And this is a good time to remind everybody, if you ever encounter a situation like this, never try to be a hero. Give the officers plenty of space. They need it in a situation like this. You can endanger yourself, the officers, any other people who are on the freeway as well. Now, more traffic whizzing by there that are able to get on the freeway. An LAPD helicopter right below us tracking this, and I'm sure that they're letting the California Highway Patrol and their comrades down on the ground to perhaps block some of these ramps so traffic can't get on. We'll be passing this cloud here in just a second, and we'll have a better view of this. There we go. Still on the eastbound side of the 101 freeway, heading into Encino now, approaching the 405
Wow,
freeway. One last cloud here, and there we go. There he is. Middle lane, staying in the middle lane, staying at or below the speed limit. Has stopped a couple of times, but then continued on his way. He looks agitated. He's obviously acting erratically, and there's a possibility he has a weapon with him.
And because of those highly tinted windows, it's really difficult to see exactly how many people might be in that car. Rick, I think you said maybe there was the driver and another passenger, at least at this point. That's what we know.
That's right. That's exactly right. And none of that has really been confirmed. Now, we are hearing right now that they are going to transition this pursuit into more of a tracking mode. That's why we've seen the officers back off considerably, and the LAPD helicopter is just circling directly overhead. I would say there's a good, a good distance here now between the officers, LAPD, and possibly some CHP, and this hybrid van, this newer model Audi possibly, eastbound on the 101 freeway. It's probably a good quarter to half mile now, the distance between this individual and those officers. And again, they do this at times because of safety. They don't want to agitate somebody who's already so unstable, who may have a weapon, who could do something to hurt other people. And you can see traffic still being let on these ramps in the valley here through Encino, tracking it in an eastbound direction. Now 2 LAPD helicopters up overhead. One may be relieving the other. That happens on occasion as well.
And Rick, for folks that are just joining us now as we move into the 10:30 hour here, this is a police pursuit that began at Tahunga and Chandler. We are watching this car on the eastbound side of the 101 headed to the Encino area. It started just after 10 this morning, about 10 minutes after 10, and has been going since. Luckily not driving terribly erratically, although at multiple points did stop in the middle of the freeway and then pick up and go again. And Rick has been overhead the entire time, giving us a bird's eye view of this.
And it's more of a tracking mode. I'll tell you what, the 2 helicopters are circling overhead, but now just one unit, one LAPD unit will widen out. We'll show you his proximity, but the other units have really backed up. There's just the one. We'll push back in. We'll push back in, and you can see just the one that's tracking him at this point. There's the LAPD helicopter, the black and white helicopter there you see circling overhead as well. We're approaching the Sepulveda Basin now, and we are approaching some traffic. This is the merge of the eastbound 101 with a very busy 405 South, which is heavy during non-rush hour traffic here. The sun is out now, or it's breaking through here in the valley. The roadway has dried out, but volume definitely picking up, and he's going to have to hit the brakes here a bit as he encounters this traffic. It's a good quarter to half mile of slowing as this stretch of the 101 eastbound coming through Encino approaches the 405. And here it is. He is having to hit the brakes now. LAPD helicopters, 2 of them, circling overhead. And it looks like those units that were backing off are really now picking up speed, and they're going to get behind him very quickly. They're roaring at 85, 90 miles an hour, and you're going to see that in just a moment. They'll come into frame here behind him. Now in the far left lane, the fast lane of the 101, and he's moving along at about 50 miles an hour, but he's going to have to slow a bit more. It's those right lanes that tend to slow the most, though, on this stretch of the 101 freeway, because those are the transition lanes from the 101 freeway east to the southbound side of the 405 freeway. So this pursuit here in the valley, it's been in the valley, Lauren and Logan, for its entire duration.
Rick, we're also learning that the CHP might soon take over. Talk about the differences between the CHP pursuing somebody versus LAPD, and are they trained better for those pit maneuvers and things of that nature?
They're trained equally. You know, they have different criteria in terms of when they go into tracking mode, when they feel it's safe or unsafe to continue the pursuit at this time. Some agencies are a little bit more ambitious. As I mentioned, the last year or two, LAPD has led the state and the country in injuries to bystanders, and because of that, they're real cautious. They don't want to hurt anybody. They want to bring these to safe endings at this time. And at this point, traffic is definitely moving slowly on the 101 freeway because of that transition with the 405. He's staying in the far left lane, the far outer lane there near the K-wall, that center divider concrete wall, meaning it does not appear, at least at this point, he'll try to make the transition with the 405. And once he gets past this stretch of slowing, it looks like there's additional slowing up ahead through Studio Cities coming out of Sherman Oaks. We're not hearing of any incidents in lanes that are causing a huge backup, so he will have an open freeway. We'll widen out a little bit, and we'll show you those units tracking him now in the fast lane. There we go. There's the first one, and now the additional units have caught up at this time to join in addition to the 2 airborne, the 2 LAPD helicopters that are circling overhead. That's what I'm talking about. See, those are the transition roads from the 101 east that are pretty much stop and go to the South 405. If you guys know the valley, you know how slow this interchange is, the busiest in the country, and he's choosing to stay in the far left lane, the open lanes here, as he'll make his way past the 405 and not transition onto the 405 and continue in an eastward direction across the valley floor, as I like to call it, into Sherman Oaks and then possibly Studio City, where there is additional slowing there.
You know, you just have to take in the amount of resources and hassle these police pursuits create. Even though this guy isn't driving recklessly, you know, he's still using up all of these police resources. You got 2 airships out there. You have the CHPs shutting down freeways. It really makes for such a mess here in Southern California, and there seem to be so many of them.
There's no question about that. The money it causes, the potential danger to the bystanders out there. But this individual, if he is apprehended, and again, I always mention that, you know, on nearly 20%, 18% on average, at least by the LAPD, are able to get away. And that's why these guys run. You know, they feel that they do have a chance, and as long as they're not in custody and they're not in jail and they're still free, they're going to continue on the best they can. And we're continuing in an eastbound direction, passing the 405, now heading now into Sherman Oaks and towards Studio City. The freeway, at least for the first couple of miles, looks open. Van Nuys Boulevard is up ahead, lots of ramps here. Let's see if he chooses to stay on the freeway here or makes one of those exits at this point.
Rick, do you notice a difference between those high-speed chases and these so-called low-speed chases and just the duration and how long they generally last?
We've covered so many of them, Logan, Lauren, over the years from up here in Skyfox. No pursuit is similar. They're all different. We're all dealing with, you know, covering an individual who might be, you know, a different personality, could be under the influence, and all of those things play a factor in how they choose to make their way trying to evade police. All right, well, now he is in the right lane, so there's a potential when we see these guys move over that they could exit the freeway at this point. The freeway up ahead still has a lot of traffic, really not an option for one of those pit maneuvers here, but we'll see if he stays to the right and makes an exit. Woodman would be the next ramp here.
And we do want to mention,
would be to the
this is an official CHP pursuit. Now they have taken over from the LAPD as we continue to watch this car make its way on the 101 in the right-bound lane there, as Rick Dickert has been keeping an eye on this for the last hour now.
And the Los Angeles Police Department initiated this pursuit, the Mission District of the LAPD Mission Station did, and now the California Highway Patrol on Route 101 here through the valley, tracking it in an eastbound direction here. There's the Woodman Avenue off-ramp. He's staying in the far right lane, so we'll see if he chooses to exit, and it looks like it's exactly what he's going to do. So again, when we see motorists being pursued like this, drivers, suspects make their way over to the right, a lot of times that means they're going to exit. And again, he may know this neighborhood because he's staying in the same general vicinity. We'll see if he just chooses to get right back on the 101 and make his way back to the west and doing laps like he did, making the left turn very safely there, staying in the left lane. There's the overpass of the 101 freeway where he just exited. No, he is going to continue northbound on Woodman at this time. So it does not appear that he's going to get back on the 101 freeway. There's a CHP unit tracking him at this point. We'll see what they choose to do, and we'll see how he handles the street lights now through the valley.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the rain has stopped. The roadway is dried out. The sun is out. All that moisture on the ground that was ponded earlier has evaporated. He's staying in the far left lane here on Woodman. This is a major north-south thoroughfare here in the valley, and this is in the Van Nuys portion, passing Notre Dame High School just a block or so ago, and he's staying in that far left lane, slowing down a little bit as he comes up on another street light, another intersection here, and we'll see exactly what he does. You can see these motors are doing exactly what they should be doing. They're behaving great. They're pulling off, giving officers plenty of room. Obviously, this is a situation where lights and sirens are blaring, so they will be able to determine these drivers down below. On this northbound stretch of Woodman, now in Van Nuys, we'll be able to see what's coming up behind them. Again, never, ever try to be a hero. Give the officers plenty of space. Stay a safe distance. You just don't know what you're dealing with. And we're dealing with a very erratic suspect at this point, one that could actually have a weapon. Those are the 3 CHP units. Again, as you mentioned, Lauren and Logan, taking over from the LAPD just crossing Magnolia there, making its way northbound. This pursuit is here still in the San Fernando Valley.
And the reason they're not pulling in front of that car, the police, is because they think that this person might have a gun, and they certainly want to stay safe themselves.
Right.
That's exactly, yeah, that's right. And also, even though the CHP is the primary, as we call them, pursuing agency, the LAPD is still going to be involved here because of the fact that this is the city of Los Angeles, and we're on surface streets now, and they're going to need officers' help at intersections to make sure that everybody remains safe.
You are watching a pursuit that began just after 10 o'clock this morning by LAPD's Mission Division of a slow-moving car, for the most part, obeying traffic signs, except when he stops completely at a dead stop on the middle of the freeway. But so far, CHP as well as LAPD have not been able to stop this guy. He is now in the Van Nuys area on Woodman, which is a north-south thoroughfare, as Rick Dickert has been telling us all morning. He's had a bird's eye view of this. And Rick, I believe you said this was a hybrid vehicle. It looks like a minivan to me, but you have a better vantage point here.
Yeah, I can't tell at this point. It's sort of one of those, compact SUVs, tinted windows. Again, we don't know if it's just the driver, the suspect that's in there. Paper plates. We don't know if it's a stolen vehicle. We don't know exactly what initiated this pursuit. He's pulling off to the right lane there just to get past this Prius here. Now at the intersection of Oxnard Street and Woodman here, making a right turn, which will take him in an easterly direction through Valley Glen over into the North Hollywood area here. Let's see if he continues on that path, though, or decides to make a southbound turn if he was to turn right here in the valley. You could see the shadows from those LAPD helicopters. They're still circling overhead at this point, so the Los Angeles Police Department is still involved. That's the orange Metro busway right there that he's stopped at, and he's remaining very cautious at these intersections at this point because he stopped here. It looks like the CHP, and there are still some LAPD units
because
and some
he's
people
on surface
watching
streets
there.
now, yeah.
You could see some people watching now. If he's deciding to make one of those little pit stops here, if he's just sort of toying with the officers as he did on the 101 freeway, both on the east and westbound sides of the 101. Again, but you could see people are coming out to watch what's going on, and there he goes again.
Yeah, you
so
see the police get out of their
drawn.
car, draw the guns, and then they run back into their car when he takes off.
That's exactly right. So now at this point, there could be a situation too, and this is, I just mentioned this to Lauren and Logan because, I've covered so many of these. Officers could be in touch with somebody that this individual knows. They may have a little bit more background information. They've been working on that the entire time, trying to ascertain as much as they can about this suspect. And they may have already known about this suspect. Again, we're getting very little information from the Los Angeles Police Department as to why this pursuit was initiated in the first place. It could have just been a simple failure to yield. This guy may have went through a stop sign or may have been driving erratically at one point, even though he's driving well within the law at this point, stopping at all these stoplights and acting very safely. But what he's not doing is he's not pulling over. All right, he's making a left-hand turn.
Rick, it looks like the passenger's window is down. Is there a way to get a better idea as to whether there's a passenger in there? I mean, can you zoom in? Or?
We noticed that as well, but we can't determine it, but it didn't appear that there was at this point. We'll get the street for you in just a moment here, but he made a left turn, a northbound turn here. So he's heading up into the North Hollywood area.
And that's where this pursuit began.
That's right. So again, I mentioned this time and time again that these individuals at times passing Irwin there, heading northbound, like to go into neighborhoods that they're familiar with. None of us like to go into areas where we're not familiar with the streets there. And it looks like this could be Fulton, heading northbound on Fulton, coming up from Irwin here, traveling northbound into the North Hollywood area here. So more on the eastern side of the San Fernando Valley. Typical traffic that we'd see during the late morning hours before the lunch rush here. Obviously the morning rush has ended, just passed over Victory Boulevard, heading northbound on a stretch of roadway that has moderate congestion at this point. Again, I mentioned that the roadway has dried out. The sun has come out a bit here in the valley after this morning's rain, which makes it not as dangerous when a pursuit is going on like this. LAPD and CHP both involved. We're in an area now very close to where this pursuit started. Again, unclear why the pursuit was initiated at this point. It looks like a newer Audi here without plates on it that's being pursued, and the driver could actually have a weapon at this point.
And Rick, we're going to move up into about an hour that this pursuit is going on pretty soon. He has been going at a low rate of speed, but he has not pulled over. So how long will police, allow this really to go on?
Well, again, they have two helicopters circling overhead, and it looks like the police have pulled off quite a bit. As we widen out here, they're in tracking mode, as we call it. This suspect is still wanted. There's still a helicopter circling overhead, so they will track this individual to wherever he ends up. We believe it's a male driver here that's being pursued. But because we're on surface streets now, they've made a decision because of the volume, the traffic, the pedestrian traffic as well, and because of the volatility of the behavior of this individual and the fact that he could have a weapon, they've decided to pull off and see if he just decides to pull over on his own. He's making one of those stops here now in the middle of Fulton, which we believe is Fulton here. And let's see what he does. He may look behind and say, wow, where did all the officers go? Because we'll widen out again. We'll look down the street, and you can see here, we don't see those units anymore. Well, there they are, a good block back. So they are holding back at a safe distance, but now they're approaching him northbound here. That's the Tahunga Wash overcrossing there here in the valley as we approach the North Hollywood area, all part of the city of Los Angeles. So again, a scene that we saw on the 101 freeway, both sides of the 101 through the valley. Here come the officers, and there he goes again. CHP and 2 LAPD units there. Now he's deciding to slow down and stop again.
I mean, this is like a cat and mouse game with this guy.
So, you took the words right out of my mouth, Lauren, here. And we're very close to Burbank Bob Hope Airport, so we're having to let some traffic go through here for just a moment, and then we're going to be on our way following this a bit closer here. Northbound here in the valley, approaching North Hollywood, still seeing those 2 LAPD helicopters circling, and we're tracking this from above here and see if it will come to a safe conclusion.
And it's just safer to do what they're doing right now. They don't want to get into any kind of a shootout if this person does have a gun, or try to approach them from the other side and cause any problems.
And the other thing is, when people see a caravan of LAPD cruisers like that, they get out of their homes to see what all the ruckus is about, and it creates more crowds on the sidewalks, which you absolutely don't want in these situations.
That's right. Looks like that's exactly right, Lauren. It looks like he's going to make a right turn here onto Sherman Way, which would take him in an easterly direction through North Hollywood, and then if he continued on over into the city of Burbank. Now, if that's the case, then we're in a different city limit. There could be some Burbank police involved in this as well. You can see there's the California Highway Patrol unit, LAPD unit right behind him. This could be a situation now, though, if they feel it's safe enough, they could try a pit maneuver to spin him out. But again, a situation where he has a weapon, and there's a kind of a look into that passenger window, by the way, that you had mentioned, Lauren and Logan, rolled down, and it looks like he just rolled it up. He must have heard me. So there it goes. It's up, and now it's tinted there, and he may have been rolling it up and down to perhaps try to communicate, because it looks like at times when he has stopped, he has tried to create a dialogue with the police department.
Rick, I'm wondering if a pit maneuver is more likely if you have a driver that's driving erratically and really potentially causing some problems, either crashing into other cars or pedestrians or what have you, versus this driver who seems to be driving rather slowly and cautiously. And I think that's, maybe they'll just let him do what he does until it gets worse.
And I think that's really what's happening here, because he is driving so cautiously and keeping to all the stoplights and street lights here. They are essentially letting him just kind of go on his way. They're backing off, and then they're approaching him again. The LAPD airships are tracking him from above as well. And you can see, there we go again. We have some people just coming out, watching, seeing what's going on, maybe taking some pictures or movies for their social media, which we see so frequently here. Now he's made a stop. Let's widen out. If he's just stopping because he chooses to stop in the middle of the intersection, let's pan to the right a little bit. Yeah, it looks like he's just making one of those stops again, because he really doesn't need to at this point. The traffic is stopped well ahead of where he is at. And again, we're on Sherman Way, approaching the 170 in the North Hollywood area here. And let's see, the officers are going to approach him from behind again, and it looks like as that happens, he slowly starts to make his move again. More cat and mouse action here, now on the eastbound side of Sherman Way.
It almost makes me wonder if he has one of these navigation systems where you have to be stopped in order to use it, because they know that you're driving.
Interesting.
Because he seems, as Rick has been mentioning, to be doing laps here in the valley, circling back to the point where this pursuit began. But now he's in a bit of traffic.
And it doesn't seem
Yeah,
like
he
the police
certainly
are
is.
trying to get in front of him to stop him from traveling in the direction he's going.
Yeah, he's kind of boxed in here at this intersection, this tight intersection. We'll see what it is. We'll widen out. Let's see what the street is. This is, again, he's traveling eastbound on Sherman. Wait,
I
somebody just
think I
jumped out
saw-
of the car. Yeah,
It looked
somebody
like
just got out of the car
a
here.
news
Let's push in.
photographer.
Let's see what's going on. The Jack in the Box sign is following us.
Looked like a news
And,
photographer
yeah,
with the
that's what
camera
it
on his
was.
shoulder.
It sure does.
That's exactly right. So, which is not the wisest thing to do
No.
if this individual has a gun. Hopefully that wasn't one of our photographers. There you go, more people there. This is on Sherman Way, eastbound on Sherman Way still. And I'm seeing more police activity in the neighborhood, so it looks like there are some supporting officers joining in here at this point. But he's still moving at a very safe pace, safe speed here, making his way eastbound, and will be approaching the 170 freeway, the Hollywood freeway, the 170 portion of the Hollywood freeway here. So he will have an option to get back on a freeway here if he so does choose. And we say we believe it's a male suspect at this point. Unclear if you're just joining us, if there's anybody else inside this automobile that started as a pursuit here in the Valley by the Los Angeles Police Department. Now the CHP and LAPD are both involved. Unclear as to why the pursuit started at this point. We don't think that there's been anybody injured as a result of this. We haven't seen any crashes. He's been driving relatively safely. We don't see any damage to the automobile either.
Yeah, just an incredible low-speed pursuit here that's been going on since just after 10 this morning, with this driver at times stopping dead in his tracks in the middle of freeways, in the middle of these side streets here. And then when police stop and get out of their vehicles, he picks up again and keeps going. But luckily, not driving terribly erratically or at high rates of speed, so that does cut down on the potential for crashes with other vehicles. But because he is potentially armed, law enforcement is taking this very cautiously.
Absolutely, and they're playing it that way. They're seeing what they're dealing with, and they handle each pursuit differently. But because he's driving cautiously, they're being a bit guarded as well, and just sort of watching this more in tracking mode at this point. He just crossed over the 170, so he's not going to be getting on that portion of the Hollywood freeway, and he continues to make his way eastbound here on Sherman Way, and he'll be making his way into Burbank shortly.
And you've mentioned this is a newer model Audi he's driving?
That's what we heard. The possibility it was. I can't tell from our altitude at this point, but that's a possibility. It is definitely a newer model car, tinted windows, which makes it more difficult for officers to determine what they're dealing with, and paper plates. So, and again, we don't know if this is a stolen vehicle. That's Laurel Canyon. He is going to make a right turn, which will take him in a southerly direction on Laurel Canyon, coming away from Sherman Way here now in North Hollywood, close to the Arts District of North Hollywood. Still in the city of Los Angeles here in the San Fernando Valley. You can see through his windshield there a
Yeah,
little
you
bit.
can
You
almost
see it
look like he's
his
on
arm
the
up.
phone.
Yep, it
Rick,
certainly
you were
does.
mentioning sometimes these drivers get on the phone to loved ones or friends, or sometimes they're even talking to the police if the police can somehow get a hold of them.
Absolutely, and this could be a situation. This could be his car. We don't know that. You know, there's a possibility it is, and now we can determine it is definitely a male at this point, making his way in a southbound direction on Laurel Canyon. But a lot of times, what'll happen is if somebody recognizes the vehicle and knows the suspect or knows what happened initially, because again, we don't know how this pursuit started. That they're reaching out, or maybe he's reaching out to somebody for some aid, some advice in terms of what's happening. He's, obviously he's acting a little bit erratically, despite the fact that he is keeping within the bounds of the traffic laws at this point. He is driving cautiously. It doesn't look like he wants to wreck that new car, making a very safe right-hand turn there, which is now going to take him in the direction back to where we just were. So now he's heading back towards the west at this point here, and we'll get you a street in just a moment. It does not appear, let's pan the camera just slightly right, what the closest officer is to him. It doesn't appear that there are any officers nearby again. They've sort of backed off yet again here in North Hollywood. He's coming back towards the 170 freeway here in the San Fernando Valley, and there's the 170 right there. He'll be going underneath it. by the Parkway here against the 170 freeway. The 170 freeway crossing overhead. There's no on and off ramp here, so there was no real option for him to get on the freeway.
And Rick,
so he just
for folks just joining us, it is 11 o'clock. You are watching a pursuit that started just about 10 minutes after 10 this morning, taking place all throughout the valley right now in the North Hollywood area. Apparently, a man behind the wheel here. We do not know how it begun, but we are hearing that he is potentially armed with a gun, which is why law enforcement has been tracking at a significant distance behind him. But this continues now into the 11 o'clock hour.
And he's doing one of these laps in the valley again, Lauren Logan, now on Van Owen, but heading in a westbound direction. He was eastbound on Sherman Way, and Sherman Way and Van Owen parallel one another here through the valley Valley Village area, just north of LA City College here, LA Valley College here, and he'd be making his way back towards Van Nuys. He's been staying in the valley. Again, he very well has roots here, friends here, a home here in the valley, and that's why he's staying close by like many of these suspects do. So this is now more in tracking mode again, because it appears that the officers have decided to pull off again, and when they do, a lot of times that means they know who they are dealing with. They know the individual. They perhaps even have a residence that he is connected to. Let's see what the intersection is now here on Van Owen. Yeah, you can see making the step up. Now they're coming up upon him again. He does have the red light at this point, and each time he does come to a stop, the officers do come out. They try to give him orders for him to surrender, to get out, and end this peacefully, but he has yet to do that. He sort of has just been playing what we've been calling the cat and mouse game with him, and it doesn't appear that he's doing it now, even though the officers clearly are out with their guns drawn, giving him very strict instructions here. This is at the intersection of Van Owen, and we'll get the cross here for you in a moment here in the Valley Village, Valley Glen area.
In the meantime,
it's a busy area. You could see the strip malls.
Rick, we're learning it's a Honda Odyssey.
Honda Odyssey.
A Honda Odyssey. So if you know somebody who might be driving this white Honda Odyssey, probably be a good idea to contact police, see if they can help him pull over and have this end peacefully.
You know, you always think when these pursuits go on for as long as they do that eventually they must have to run out of gas. But now with these newer model cars, they're more gas efficient.
Yeah, and I'm learning something from one of my LAPD friends. He just texted me and said that, a lot of times because, and you can see people lining up there waving, we just saw that here on Van Owen, because it's an SUV, a lot of times they will not attempt that pit maneuver because those higher-sided vehicles may overturn and cause additional possible injury to other people if that car overturns. And but any pit maneuver, at a high speed, has a potential to cause some danger. All right, looks like he's making a right turn, a northbound turn off of Van Owen here, and we'll get the street for you here, right in the heart of the San Fernando Valley, where this pursuit started, and it continues here, having traveled on the 101 throughout the valley floor from the west end of the valley towards the east end, and we just made our way out of North Hollywood towards Valley Village, now heading in a northbound direction at this time. Also, other jurisdictions, if they join in, whether it be the California Highway Patrol or Burbank, because we are close to that, they may not comply, and they will actually act in a different manner in pursuits. They may do things slightly differently than what is considered the common play for the Los Angeles Police Department. LAPD, they're very cautious. They always want to end these peacefully. They train for these extensively, and we see it up here in Skyfox. There's a training facility right off the 5 and the 405 in the north end of the valley where they train. They mimic a pursuit. They wet down the roadways. They practice those pit maneuvers over and over again. They deal with different situations so that if they come upon one in real life like this, they know how to handle them. And here we go, LAPD. Yeah, and it looks like he's stopping just short of where he should be in front of the 7-Eleven, back up towards Sherman Way now, where he just was 10 minutes or so ago. This pursuit now over an hour. All the officers, guns drawn, giving him strict orders, on a bullhorn even.
And throughout this pursuit, we have seen this scene replicated over and over and over again, where he just picks up and continues to drive. Not really clear what that's about, but it does give you pause to think that maybe, maybe something else is going on with this driver.
you know, some kind
That's
of a
right.
mental
And
issue,
again,
Yeah.
we don't know what they know about this driver. They may
Correct.
know nothing at all. They may have a lot of information on him at this point. And we believe it's just the suspect inside the car. But now he's staying stationary a bit longer than he has. But you're right, Lauren, Logan. It's been about a half a dozen times we've seen this play out like this. So we'll see if this is the one where he's deciding to give up. He's been on his cell phone, whether or not he's been in touch with the police department or somebody he knows. We'll tilt the camera up and we'll just confirm that is Sherman Way here, running east to west, that main east-west thoroughfare through the valley. He was on Woodman, and it is Sherman Way there at this intersection here. And it looks like he's staying put for now. So now this is a
the longest
situation that
he's
could
stayed
end.
put.
Yeah, this could be a situation that he decides to comply rather quickly, or he may sit here for some time. And we've seen both of those play out in past pursuits. We've seen standoffs continue on for hours on end, shutting down freeways for hours. There was one recently on the 91 freeway that occurred. So this, fortunately, on a surface street that you're going to be able to get around.
Oh boy, he's going
there
right.
he goes. He's saying, nope, I'm going to continue on my way here. And it looks like he's going to make a left turn, which would take him westbound here through the valley on Sherman Way. Waiting for the light, as he's done ever since we've
Yeah,
come
pretty
across
incredible.
it. He's kept to 65 miles an hour or less, most of the time less than 65 miles an hour. And we have not seen him run through one red light. We have not seen him drive erratically. The only thing erratic about it is the stopping in the middle of the freeway and at some of these intersections and not moving on. But he's not endangering anybody else. At least that's what we've seen from up here thus far. Regardless, still a very dangerous situation.
Right,
Okay,
and
so here we
creating
are.
a traffic mess for folks that are trying to get around the valley.
Who are held back, exactly, especially on that 101. Fortunately, that's back to normal. Both sides of the 101 are open. We're well off the freeway now, heading in a westbound direction now on Sherman Way. And he stopped here just because of a little bit of traffic. We'll widen out here and we'll see if that is indeed the case. Or looks like he's slowing down a little bit on his own again.
And is
Unless
the
he's got
reason they're
the-
not using the spike strips because he is just
Yeah.
driving so cautiously? They just don't
Yeah,
want
and
to
it's-
do anything that might make the situation worse.
Yeah, and it's difficult in areas like this, and just to
predict.
determine his route where
Yeah.
he's going to go. But that pursuit we saw last week, I was thinking, and again, this is just my thought process from being up here in Skyfox for so long, is that that we had an officer deployed at a specific off ramp, well up the freeway from where that suspect decided to exit at Lorena Street on the northbound 5. And there was an officer there just by chance throwing down the spike strip? No, I think he was positioned there because they believed that suspect was going back to a neighborhood where the pursuit started, where he was familiar with, and they know those things, and they learn those things through covering these pursuits and tracking suspects, and they were able to bring that one to a safe end to disable the car. And in a situation like this, unclear how much they know about this suspect, whether or not they're fully aware or have no idea of what they're dealing with.
Rick, you were mentioning earlier, the arsenal of weapons that the law enforcement can use in these situations. One of them, of course, a pit maneuver, but as you mentioned, they are unlikely to try a pit maneuver with an SUV like this or a high-profile vehicle. The other is the spike strips, which are also hard to use when you can't predict where a driver may be headed. What else do they have at their disposal that they could possibly use with this situation?
Time and patience and negotiations, if they are in touch with him. He's making a fast right there, and again, it looks like the officers were out of their vehicles again. A couple of motor officers have joined as well. Every pursuit's different, Lauren, and those are the main ones. They try to disable the vehicle. He's not complying. He's not pulling over. They've lit him up. They've tried to tell him to get out of the automobile, and he hasn't. So it's a situation where they're either going to try to just give him time and space, and hopefully he'll decide to pull over. Maybe he'll run out of gas. Unclear how much gas this automobile had when this pursuit started, or try to stop it through the pit maneuver or through a spike strip. Making his way northbound, again, at a stoplight, so he's deciding to stop. That's at Woodman here. And it looks like he's going to continue back north on Woodman. And it was Woodman where he got off the freeway, off the 101 freeway. So he's staying in the valley here, but now making his way more up towards the northeast side of the San Fernando Valley. There's the tracks, the Metrolink tracks there, the freight tracks there. Now he is slowing down yet
Once again.
Let's see what happens here. Maybe he's Okay, his first act of obedience that I'm seeing besides not pulling over, going over an island there and making a hard U-ey and now heading southbound on Woodman. So it looks like he's gotten a little bit agitated and he wanted to turn around, so he decided to just hop over that island there. He didn't endanger anybody. Looks like he's got his cell phone. We got a good look there into the windshield. And again, it just looks like, at least in the front seat, it's just the driver at this point. Tinted windows prohibiting us from determining if there's anybody in the back. I mentioned that statistic again. 18% of these suspects on average within the LAPD jurisdiction are able to get away. A lot of those are just because of safety. They let them get away, or motorcyclists. They have a better shot of evading police than automobiles that are being pursued. And again, this Honda Odyssey, this new Honda Odyssey with paper plates being pursued by the LAPD and the CHP for well over an hour now, heading back southbound on Woodman. We'll see if he makes his way all the way back to the 101 where this pursuit started.
About how many police officers are behind him? I counted about 4 or 5 patrol cars there.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and news vans trailing behind as well.
We did see at one point
overhead.
we did see at one point a cameraman come up to this van, this Honda Odyssey, to get a shot of the driver. A really dangerous maneuver. We don't know where that footage will end up. But I mean, he has been stopping at lights, so that was what someone decided to do. An
opportunity. That's exactly right. An opportunity to get that shot, and that photographer did, although dangerous. And I'm sure the officers will tell that cameraman that that was not the safest of moves. All right, we're vertical on this right now. We'll get a better shot of you, and now making a left turn and now heading back in an eastward direction here. I believe it may be Sherman Way again that he is on, and I'm counting a dozen or so units behind, LAPD and CHP. 2 LAPD helicopters still circling overhead. Now it appears, Lauren and Logan, that he is kind of making circles in this general vicinity, kind of the Valley Village, Valley Glen area of the valley bordering North Hollywood, just to the west of the 170 Hollywood Freeway and well to the north of the 101 freeway.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like he has a strategy.
No.
He's just driving around
and that very well may be the case. You know, he's obviously agitated. He's talking on the phone. He's acting erratically. We saw him commit his first vehicle infraction, besides the fact that he's not pulling over, in terms of driving over that island there,
you know, Rick,
on Woodman and making a hard U-turn.
You've covered so many of these. It's rare that you do see someone involved in a police chase who has planned or mapped it out well. They're usually pretty frantic and desperate if they're running from the cops.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Usually they
but he's
probably
not
wake
speeding,
up now thinking,
he's not jumping out, he's not running into a neighborhood, he's not calling friends to help in some way. He's just driving down the street there.
We saw him unroll the window on the 101 freeway and give us helicopters a gesture. We saw that. We saw him, stopping all traffic on both sides of the 101 freeway. But when he's been on surface streets, just like right now, as he makes his way on Sherman Way in an eastbound direction towards North Hollywood, he's obeying all the street signs and not coming upon anybody, staying a safe distance away from the vehicles ahead of him. Some of the same advice I give drivers every morning, especially in the wet weather. And again, thankfully that light rain and drizzle that was occurring earlier this morning here in Southern California has ended, so the streets are dry. Here we go again. All right, stopping middle lane here. He's on Sherman Way. He's on the eastbound side of Sherman Way here, past Woodman, approaching the 170. And once again, these officers, this is a standard protocol. They get out of their vehicles, their guns are drawn, they start to give him strict orders, and they're hopeful that eventually one of these times, because we've seen this over a half a dozen times now, that he will decide to give up. So with each time he's been staying put, staying stationary a little bit longer, so perhaps they're starting to make some progress at this point.
And there
we'll push in a little bit.
Doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason of where he decides to stop.
No, absolutely not. He just makes that stop. And whether or not this is a situation where he's in communication with someone, because we have seen him on his cell phone.
Right.
If somebody's telling him, hey, come on, let's just put this to an end, whether it be a loved one, a family friend, a family or a friend, or the police department. He may be in touch with an agency. We've heard that in the past where they're trying to just explain their case and that they don't want to go to jail or what have you, and they are able to talk him down and bring the pursuit to an end. So far, nobody injured. At least that's what we know. There was an initial report saying that he was armed, he had a gun or may have a gun, so we're hanging on to that one. This is a Honda Odyssey that's been pursued for about an hour and 15 minutes or so here. Only in the valley. It started in the valley, and we're still in the valley on the border of North Hollywood here on the eastbound side of Sherman Way between Woodman and the 170 freeway.
Not far from that Van Nuys Airport.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Right here through the valley floor, and he's been making circles. The last 15 or 20 minutes, he's been kind of staying put off the freeway here and around Sherman Way, Woodman, Van Owen, that general area. And this, I would say, if you agree with me, Logan and Lauren, probably the longest he's stayed put.
Yeah, he certainly has. What typically happens after these individuals are caught? They tally up all of the violations, and obviously they're going to be charged with quite a lot of different crimes.
You know, this had. Go ahead, Rick.
No, you go ahead, Lauren.
As Rick mentioned, he didn't have many moving violations besides, you know, jumping that divider at one point to make a U-turn. However, a lot of times, typically in the past, when we've seen cars stop like this and wait it out with police, a lot of times their motivation is to get rid of whatever drugs they have inside their vehicle, but it doesn't appear to be the case here.
No, we haven't seen anything being discarded, although we came upon the pursuit after it had already been going on 10 or 15 minutes or so, but we haven't heard of that. You know, it's just a situation that that every pursuit is different, and the way that these men and women who are being tracked and pursued by police are going to act in a different manner. Again, some are under the influence, some are third strikers, you know, who know they're going back to jail. They'll do whatever they can to evade police. Some are dangerous criminals with weapons who really don't care about their life or anybody else's, and those are the most serious situations.
In situations like this, Rick, where we see him stopping for an extended period of time, is there any way they would create some kind of blockade in front of him so that he couldn't take off again?
That does happen again in situations where there is a weapon involved. They may be a little more cautious. Sorry about that cloud. We'll pop under it. We're at a pretty high altitude and pretty steep here. But looking down, this is now a standoff situation, and this can go on for some time. And we will likely see more officers arrive on scene here. Just as I say that, he's on the move yet again here.
This is at Sherman at Laurel Canyon, and once again takes off after stopping for a few minutes there. He's back on the move. You have been watching this pursuit that began in North Hollywood, has lapped around the valley multiple times. It is 11:18 right now. It's been going on for more than an hour, and the driver at multiple points in this chase has decided to stop in the middle of roadways, in the middle of freeways, in the middle of these side streets here, and kind of lead police on this cat and mouse game. And they're being very cautious because they do believe the driver is armed.
And he's on the eastbound side of Sherman Way yet again, and he's got some traffic right here. That's why he's stopping here at this point, at least, going towards the left lane at a stoplight coming away from Laurel. Close to the 170 freeway, the North Hollywood area. Yet again, it looks like all these automobiles are trying to pull over to the right. Again, a dangerous situation, you know, especially being that, you know, there's a possibility that this individual has a gun. We've seen horrific situations in the past where suspects, for whatever reason, decide to leave the car that they're being pursued in behind and actually carjack somebody else, pull them out of their automobiles and pick up their car, maybe because their car's become disabled or is almost out of gas. And again, a good point to make is we just don't know how much gas this Honda Odyssey had when this pursuit first started here in the valley. We can see a pretty good shot of him there. He's got his window down, and it looks like his
I see his hands are out too, right?
It almost looks like he's smoking a cigarette.
Very casually, yep, very casually, just waiting for the light like everybody else in traffic.
Yeah, Rick, it
we are hearing some.
That appears to be a gesture.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
We apologize for that. We're hearing some chatter about a spike strip just because now the fact that he's kind of staying in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, they could get in front of him.
They're going to have a chance. They're going to have a chance now to maybe set up at different intersections, being that he's sort of making a loop in the same general vicinity. So we'll see if that comes to fruition or not. But at this point, let's wind out and see. Is that just a stoplight here? And traffic is just being held here at the light.
Wow.
Actually, it looks like there could be some officers in the intersection.
In the intersection there, yeah.
There is one right there off to the left. You see that one. You see the tanker there in the intersection as well. looks like there's some road work on one of the lanes. So a lot going on here, including police holding traffic there. And we'll push back in to the suspect and we'll see what happens. So maybe they're doing just that. They're attempting. Oh, he's getting out of the car. He is getting out of his vehicle now.
There we go.
So let's see what happens. Okay, his arms are raised, so he is complying. He's doing exactly what he's being told. They're telling him to walk backwards towards them, and he will continue to do so until he's at a pretty close. He's pretty close to those officers, and he will be told to spread out on the roadway, always having the back to the officers, keeping his hands in clear view, laying flat on the pavement here, and then the lead officer will approach him and make sure arms are out, legs out. So he really is doing a great job complying. Why he decided just at that point? Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe we'll never know. But it looks like this is going to come to a safe end, at least at this point. But this is far from over until we see those 4 fingers, meaning code 4, all clear. This is still a very dangerous scene, being that this individual allegedly had a gun at the start of this pursuit.
And this is
So now all
on
the
Sherman Way, correct, Rick?
Yep, on the eastbound side, but both sides of Sherman Way are impacted, but it's in the eastbound lanes that he came to a stop here, just west of the 170 freeway. So they're giving him instructions still, and they are talking to police officers down below here, and you'll see they'll gradually approach, but they want to make sure, too, that nobody else is in that vehicle. And that's why you're going to see some of the officers approach the vehicle as well. It's tinted. They don't know. He could have somebody in there.
Right.
As well, and that's exactly what you're seeing there. Guns drawn into the back of that white Odyssey, where a lead officer is going to cuff the suspect who was driving there, and he's being taken into custody. Now they're going to clear this car. We believe it was just the male suspect driver there inside the automobile, but they can't tell. They don't know for sure. So they're clearing the car right now.
And it appears we are watching the conclusion of one of the slowest police pursuits we've seen in a while, driving below the speed limit, and now he appears to be in custody after more than an hour of leading cops on a chase here.
Stopped numerous times on different freeways, different roads, and finally
Fortunately,
he stopped
no
and they
reports
took
of
him into custody.
Yeah, and fortunately, no reports of any injuries at this point.
And that is good news.
We'll have a complete wrap of this, I'm sure, at noon and again at 5.
Rick Dickert.
We'll go back to the car and just make sure that's cleared now before we sign off on this. But it does appear that they have cleared the vehicle, but they're searching it for evidence. They're going to make sure they get everything out of there. If there was a weapon, he may have left it. He likely did leave it behind there. And once that happens, then they'll put up the 4 fingers. And it does appear that this Odyssey has been cleared. But avoid Sherman Way. Hey, if you're just getting ready to head out, it's jammed. It's blocked on both sides, just to the west of the 170 freeway. Van Owen would be a good alternate. You could see here this activity will likely remain in play here for some time.
Rick Dickert on top of the scene of this police pursuit that has led cops all throughout the valley and has come to an end without injuring anyone else, thankfully.